Alright, so today we're going to be installing this Chassis Unlimited dual swing rear bumper. It's the Octane model onto my 2021 Ram Power Wagon. What we'll do first is get into what you're here to see, and that's installation of the bumper. Then after that we'll talk a little bit about initial impressions, ordering process, customer service, things like that. And then afterwards, if you want to stick around, I do have a little bonus footage I'll tack on the end about putting a backup camera up on the rack, because once you get a spare tire on here you won't be able to use it. So if you want to see that, stick around and watch that. Alright, so let's get going. Alright, so one of the first things you'll want to do is take a 10mm socket and remove the negative terminal off of your battery. This will avoid shorting anything out when you're messing with the electrical connections. Alright, the next thing you want to do is take your license plate off. Mine was just for Phillips. Just remove yours because you'll need access to these two nuts later on in the process. Don't do anything with them now, just get your license plate out of the way. The next thing I recommend doing is dropping your spare tire out of the way. Just refer to your owner manual, but basically you'll have your rod that goes in here to connect onto the shaft where you can lower down your spare tire. I'm suggesting doing that now. One, it just gives you more space to work. Two, if you're using this dual swing, you're probably mounting your spare tire out here on the dual swing anyway, because you're bought larger tires that don't fit underneath. The other thing I'm not sure, that we'll find out later, is does the new bumper block access to this or not. There's no cutout on the new bumper, but I'm not sure if the height will be just under here, so I guess we'll find out about that later. Once your battery is disconnected, you're going to come back here and disconnect these two electrical connections right here. For this one, you'll want to pull this yellow tab back and then squeeze here, and you'll want to wiggle this red part down. It can be a little tight because you're going to get dirt and crap in here. Sit here and wiggle on it and pull on it, and eventually it'll slide straight down. You'll know it's down all the way because you'll see this red part down here all the way at the bottom. Once that's done, you can wiggle the connector apart. Alright, what I went ahead and did here is I was trying to get a good angle on this other connector. I went ahead and just used my trim tool here just to pop this connector out, just to get it out of the way, mainly just so you could see what's going on here. You shouldn't have to do this at this point. Alright, for this other connector, just use a pick tool or something and gently pull this red tab down out of the way. That'll allow you to push this tab and wiggle this connector apart. Alright, what I found trying to disconnect this connector is it wants to come off this way. This connector is actually anchored into the bumper, and of course for me I have this step in the way, which I'm actually not going to be using, but what I'm going to do is just take my trim tool, pop these two tabs out to get this connector apart. Alright, so the next thing we're going to want to do is actually remove these nuts that are actually tack welded on to this frame mount here. I did call Chassis Unlimited and I said, you know, is the intention to remove these nuts in order to use the supplied 1/2-inch bolts that come with the kit? They did say yes. I'll point something out on the bumper in a little bit that makes me question that, but I did call, they did confirm. So what a friend of mine told me is we can just put a wrench on here, and actually these tacks that hold this nut on should be weak enough that we can just snap this nut off while turning it. So let's give that a try. So I got these wires in my way of really getting the ratchet on here. So again, I'm going to take my trim tool pliers, get them under here, and pop that connector out. Alright, so I got this 15mm socket mounted on here. I'm going to go in the loosening direction to twist these off, leaving these bolts in here just so I can do more of a twisting motion. I'm going to add this large persuasion bar onto the end of my ratchet to give me a little more leverage on these. And that one is broken free. So move on to this next one. I can't get it with this longer socket on there. I had to do some extensions here. Alright, with a much longer extension put on here. A little too long, but it's the quickest one I could find. Let's get this one loosened up. one's free. Okay, so for removing these, they're 13 mil on the bolt, and the nut, as we mentioned, is a 15. Alright, I'll finish getting this one off, then I won't make you watch me struggle on the other side, but I'll do the same thing on the other side and come back. Okay, we got this other side done, and if for some reason you don't feel like you can get the leverage to break these off, you could probably come in here with maybe a Dremel, some kind of small cutoff disc, work your way around here to break these free. Alright, the next thing we're going to do while we're under here is this trailer plug. Now, my vehicle is equipped with the surround view trailer camera system, so it has this additional connector here. Yours may not have this if you're not optioned with that. If you're not, you could probably pop the connector out or pop the whole trailer plug out the back first, and you have enough excess cable here to mess with this plug outside on the back of the bumper. For whatever reason, this cable, they zip tied it up with not much slack on it, so I'm going to basically disconnect them while I'm under here. This one, you're basically going to push this tab right here down, and then you can just wiggle, pull it straight out. If you do have this option, this connector here has a little tab you'll need to pull out first, and then that's actually what you're going to push on to wiggle that connector off. Alright, to remove the actual trailer plug, there's some metal tabs on both sides of the plug here, right here. You need to push those in, then you can push the plug out. You may have to try maybe pushing one side in first. Kind of get the plug over to one side. Try to do this one hand while holding the camera. It's difficult, but anyway, push this other side in and then push it the rest of the way out. I want to do that without trying to hold a camera in front of my face. So these are the metal tabs I'm talking about. You just need to push those in on both sides, and then you can get the connector pulled out. So for this trailer plug, actually one thing I noticed that I'm going to show you over on the Chassis Unlimited bumper is that I don't think their design took this surround view trailer plug option in mind, so we're going to have to probably modify this a little bit. So let me go over to the bumper and show you what I'm talking about. Alright, so on their bumper, the trailer plug goes in sideways, which is fine. Everything matches up okay right here. Won't clip in all the way because of the clips. If the camera will cooperate. Sorry, the lighting sucks. But what you'll see here is that this corner of the plug actually hits this weld right here in the corner. So I think I'm going to have to do is grind a little corner of this plug off just to get it to fit where that weld is a little better. So I think I'll work on that. So with a little dremeling and filing, I'll show you the fit here in a minute. We got it good enough. Alright, so the next thing I wanted to talk about are these metal tabs that hold this plug in place. The metal on this bumper is a lot thicker than the stock bumper. So the space on these metal tabs is a little too narrow for these to actually spring back out and clip into place. Instructions say to kind of just bend these out and then push it in there till it pops into place. What I'm going to try to do, I think, is maybe try to take these clips off and then kind of bend them enough to get them to kind of clip back into place once the plug is in there. So using a pick tool, you pick up on this metal tab, and that'll let you slide this metal clip out of place. That tab just seats down in this little pocket right here. So I'm going to remove the other side, get it in there, and then what I'll try to do is maybe kind of pop these into place and see if I can get them to clip in back into this pocket by just allowing them to bend a little bit. So I wasn't super impressed by how loose this was once it was mounted in here, even trying to bend these metal tabs back as much as possible. The other thing I noticed is these metal tabs, given how much wiggle room there is, start to rub on this powder coating, so I can see over time that would start to wear away. So I have some 1/8-inch thick pieces of rubber that I had left over just from some other stuff. And I just kind of would ease these back and wedge this rubber in both on the top and the bottom. It's way more secure, doesn't wiggle around. I think I'm not going to have any problems there. All right, back into the truck. We're going to get these last 4 bolts from underneath the truck removed. 2 on this side, 2 on the other side. 15 mil socket. That's one thing I noticed while I was under here loosening those bolts and looking at the wiring. Actually, this wiring is zip tied to the bumper and then is routing off onto the truck, onto this wire here. So I'm going to cut these zip ties and see which ones are going to remain with the truck and which ones are going with the bumper. Alright, after trimming some zip ties, it looks like it is just the wire for the surround view camera. So, for whatever reason, I guess this is, since it's an add-on option, they don't route it out to the main harness that just isolates it all to the bumper. They just route it separately straight back to the bumper. So, it looks like if you don't have this surround view trailer camera system, you won't have to worry about this, but if you do, just be aware you'll need to cut this free. Alright, the last 2 nuts we're going to take off are these 15 mil here and here. After that, the bumper will be free to remove. I've gone ahead and put some tarps down where I'm going to lay this bumper down, because we're going to have to swap over the backup sensors if your vehicle is equipped with that, as well as the rest of the wiring harness for the trailer plug, things like that. Once these nuts are removed, you can go ahead and ease your bumper straight back. There are some metal plates that go between kind of the horns of the frame where this mounts. Those will fall down. You can try to have somebody under there to grab them before they do if you want. Otherwise, just pull straight back and we'll take it over to lay it down. Alright, so as typical fashion, as soon as you start doing something outside, it starts to rain, so I put the tarp up here. Hopefully we can see everything okay. So the next thing we're going to be doing is basically transferring over this harness over to the Chassis Unlimited bumper. Now, say if you have the parking sensors, when you take them out, you want to make sure they go in the same orientation over the Chassis Unlimited bumper. So make sure you're paying attention as you remove them. So when we're moving the harness over, there is actually nowhere really to clip into, like these have all these clips that clip into the bumper to help give you places to zip tie. That doesn't really exist on the new bumper, so what I'm going to be doing is, just in case for me, if I ever plan on putting this back to original, I may just use a trim tool to pop these out of the bumper and just leave them connected to the harness. If you don't plan on ever reusing or putting the original bumper in, we can just probably go through and it'll be real quick just to cut these ties. Now, if they end up getting in the way trying to route this harness on the new bumper, then I may just cut them off. I mean, you could probably order these offline pretty easy. This is the license plate light on the driver's side. There's a little tab here that you can push to remove the connector. It'll be the same thing on the other side. I won't show you twice. One thing to note on these though is, and we'll talk about it a little more when we get over to the other bumper, is they just provide some real tiny LEDs that actually are used to secure your license plate on. So to connect to these, you either need to cut these off, which is what I think I'm going to end up doing, or you could probably look online for a plug similar to that one that allows you to just connect into here. But we'll get into some problems with their design for the license plate lights when we get to the installation of that part, but just for now, be aware of that. I got the harness completely free, except for disconnecting the parking sensors. Except for this guy here. Not really sure what it is. It's screwed onto the bumper, feeds back into the harness. Looking at the Chassis Unlimited bumper, I don't see anywhere to reattach it to anything, so I'll probably just remove these torque screws here and probably just end up zip tying it to the harness once we get it situated over on the Chassis Unlimited bumper. Alright, so these parking sensors, like I said, you want to make sure the orientation is the same, so I've gone ahead and set this bumper down in the same orientation as my Chassis Unlimited, so the bottom of the bumper is towards me. Basically it looks like these connectors for the sensors are towards the inside on both sides, basically facing towards the hitch. So these ones are facing towards my left, whereas the ones on the other side of the hitch would be facing towards my right. So that should help make sure I get them installed in the same orientation. So I went ahead and the Chassis Unlimited comes with more of these connectors, but obviously if you can avoid breaking them, that'd be good. I'm not going to disconnect the cables because, you know, we're moving the whole harness over. If you wanted to, you basically lift this gray tab up and then you can push on it and disconnect the harness. To pop the sensor out, it's going to be hard to see. Hopefully you can see it up here on the top. Right at the tip of my pick tool, there's a little tab. So both on the top, now you just kind of set it to the side, and on the bottom, and then you can pull it straight out. So we're going to do that for the remaining 3 sensors, and then we should be free to move the whole harness over to the Chassis Unlimited bumper. So the Chassis Unlimited bumper comes with these new mounts for your parking sensors. Note that, again, because the bumper is thicker than most OEM bumpers, they say these clips don't actually engage with the bumper. And they do say in their instructions to use some kind of glue or adhesive if you're having problems with them staying in there. So we'll see how that goes, if we end up having to do that or not. Like I said, just kind of trying to stick it in the Chassis Unlimited bumper without putting too much pressure on it because I didn't want to get it stuck right away. It seems like they should be a pretty snug fit, so we'll see if we have any problems with them sliding out. If we do, then we can find some kind of adhesive. But what I want to do, show you, is these do need to go in your bumper, your Chassis Unlimited bumper, a certain way. One, like we said during the removal, you have these tabs here that secure your sensor. So just like on the original bumper, they were on the top and the bottom. But there's also one more thing you need to pay attention to. You can see here you have just a little notch, big long notch, and over here you have a smaller notch. If you look at the parking sensor, you'll see there's a little notch here. So when you clip these together, this will fit down in that small notch. So again, make sure this small notch is facing away from the hitch. Like I said, it'll be the opposite on the other side, your left side of where the hitch is at. So I'll move over to the Chassis Unlimited bumper and just kind of get these stuck in real quick, and we'll see how they fit. Alright, so we got the parking sensor housings in place. They seem to fit pretty good. One thing while I'm here, I'll go ahead and point out, I did go ahead and install these lights. These are Baja Design Squadron Sports. As you can see, there's a little bit of a gap around them. I think Chassis Unlimited probably made these cutouts more for like the rigid square lights. Probably take up more of this space a little better. I'm just staying consistent with the rest of the lighting. That's the only reason I'm running these. I went ahead and just put these in ahead of time just to save some time, because it's not really necessarily relevant to installing the bumper. It's just one bolt to mount your lights in place. Alright, I'm going to lay this down, get the harness moved over, and start plugging stuff in. So as I mentioned, there's not a lot of places to clip into or zip tie to for routing the harness over here. It's going to be definitely interesting to get this parking sensor in. It's right underneath this metal plate. There's enough space there. I hope I'm going to have to get the sensor in and then connect the plug. Same thing on this side. We got to get this parking sensor mounted right underneath this plate. So let me play around with the routing, figure out what works, and then we'll start zip tying and stuff in place. So another thing to note here is you have these very large connectors that go down here on this end of the bumper. They're really not going to fit through any of these locations here. So once we get the routing thought out, obviously I'm going to start feeding the cables from this end, leaving these for last, hanging out down here. Okay folks, to say I'm not super thrilled by this design, having this plate right where you're trying to put this sensor. As you can see, maybe really bending this connector wire over to squeeze this in here. So what I had to actually do is push this housing all the way out, basically removing it from the bumper, set this sensor in place, start pushing the housing back up from underneath until it clipped in with the sensor, and then continue pushing it. So it will look like we'll probably end up having to use some kind of adhesive because there's pressure obviously already being put by this connector from the back that may end up working its way out. They should have had some provision here or thought this through a little more, I think. So I'll probably end up having to do the same thing on the other side, so I'll keep working away at it. Okay, so not happy really at all here, folks. I was going to talk about it more in the opens, but they did say they changed their design to some three-piece design and added some internal bracing, so I'm wondering if this is the reason. Basically, there's no way to get this parking sensor in here without this connector basically being completely folded over, putting pressure on the sensor and therefore obviously pushing the housing out. I mean, that's not cool. Thinking we probably can just notch this, but let me think about it, see what we want to do here. I'm just adding a voiceover here, reading from the instructions. It says the sensor housing can be removed from the factory bumper and placed into the new bumper in the same orientation and position as the factory bumper. So they clearly are saying they don't want these rotated in any way per their instructions. Alright, I've gone ahead and notched this out, probably a little more than I needed to. But now this will fit in there with room for the cable to come out without smashing everything down. I really think this is an oversight by Chassis Unlimited, but we'll talk about that more later. I'm going to hit this up with a little Rust-Oleum, let it dry while I work on zip tying everything else in place. Alright, so we got the cable roughly routed. We'll do a little bit of cleanup. I haven't really zip tied anything down or tightened anything up. I want to see once it sits on the truck what we'll do. Starting at this end, I'm hoping these will have enough slack to plug into the original harness. We'll see when we get under there. Kind of routed it along here. Again, we had to cut out for the sensor. This thing is just flopping here just to keep it from dangling. I've connected it here, but again, we'll zip tie it up once we get into the truck. Again, I wish there was something more to do here, but we'll see what we can do once it's under the truck. Got this sensor again notched out, routed under here. And I've just kind of looped this up out of the way so we can get it mounted up on the truck here. And like I said, we'll zip tie stuff once we get under the truck. The next thing I kind of want to mess with while it's off the truck is the license plate lights. I kind of hate cutting the original harnesses. You could probably find a connector that would fit on here, but I'll show you some other problems with that here once we get to the LEDs themselves and how they attach. So the next thing I want to basically take a look at before I get the bumper on the truck are these license plate lights that are provided by Chassis Unlimited. Basically what these will do is there's a nut and a little star lock washer on the back that you unthread. This then goes through the license plate hole, through the hole in the bumper, and then you slide the nut back on and secure it from the back side, and that's what holds your license plate on. Well, the problem with this is if you ever want to take your license plate frame off, license plate off, you then have to remove this whole light assembly and feed this entire wire back out. But the problem is the the connection. You know, if you put anything on the ends of these, you're not going to be able to feed this back out, you know, through the nut that's secured from the back side. Even if you crimp on one of the smallest kind of spade connectors here, you know, that's not going to fit. So you're almost left with having to cut the wires and re-splice them every time you want to put this license plate frame on and off. Now granted, I don't ever plan on doing that, but just something to be aware of. So for now, we'll deal with the license plate lighting once it's on the truck. So let's go ahead and I'm going to get somebody to help carry this, and we'll get it installed on the truck. So in order to mount the bumper and use the provided 1/2-inch hardware, these holes where we broke the nuts off of will need to be opened up to accept these 1/2-inch bolts. So I'm going to go ahead and just drill these out. One thing that I want to talk more about that I find interesting though, like I talked about earlier where the customer support told me that they needed to be removed, is that I do find these holes, while the 1/2-inch bolt will fit, a lot narrower than the outside one where the bolts are not existing. I find that interesting. Like I said, they said to snap those off, but it almost seems like maybe somebody thought about using the OEM hardware, or they just really wanted to reduce the left and right movement by just barely allowing these bolts to pass through. Anyway, we're going with what they told us on the phone, so I'm going to drill those bolt holes out. Alright, the next thing we're going to do is carry the bumper over here and get it mounted. Basically the bumper will rest right on top of the hitch here. You can be able to drop some bolts through here that go through the bumper. Once I drop those in, I'm not going to tighten them up, but that'll just keep it in place while somebody else keeps a hand on it while I climb underneath and at least get a little bit of the bolts put in to start securing it. Alright, so we got the bumper in position. I actually ended up taking my old 33 tire and giving me something to have us rusted on in between, kind of fine positioning, as we didn't have anything else. We got it up onto there, figured out where it needed to go, and then moved it in. We got some bolts dropped through here, and right now I just have some bolts coming in underneath, just kind of making sure it doesn't fall or go anywhere. Nothing's really tightened up yet, so basically these are still loose. I'm going to get the ones underneath the truck going first, at least get them snugged up. The instructions talk about checking height and position left to right, but you know, there's bolts, holes here, and enough bolts that indicate bolts go here, so I don't really know how you're going to adjust the height when this is bolted down to the trailer hitch. Left to right, you're kind of limited again on the play and the screw holes, and like I was showing you before, there really isn't much, so you know, we'll get it as good as we can. So let's go ahead and hop under the truck and start working on some of those bolts. So like I said, I just got some bolts in here just to keep it from going anywhere, as well as the ones that are dropping down through the trailer hitch. So I'm going to go through and get the rest of the bolts basically put in and started, and just kind of start snugging them up. They did provide, these are all grade 8 zinc coated bolts. So I'll get these all started in all the locations, kind of start snugging them up. I won't tighten anything down yet, just get everything kind of snugged up in position. Like I said, there's really not much adjustment room here. Like I said, you're bolted up and down to this trailer hitch, and side to side you really don't have the space of these bolts, so there shouldn't really be any adjustment needed. So let me get the rest of these bolts started and just kind of get some wrenches on them to snug them up a little bit. Alright, we got the bolts all in, everything kind of snugged down in all locations. So now we're going to go through and torque them down. The instruction from Chassis Unlimited doesn't provide any torque. I did look up 1/2-inch grade 8 zinc bolts online, like Fastenal. It's a good website, it's got a good table, lists them at 106 foot-pounds, so that's what we're going to go with. Alright, went ahead and torqued everything down. So now, like I said, I'm going to deal with this license plate lighting issue. I think the best case will be to just get the license plate mounted with the wires coming through, splice the positives and negatives together coming in here, and as much as I don't want to, I'm just going to go ahead and just cut off a little bit of this connector to leave a little pigtail to reuse later if I need to, and then just splice into this wire with the positive and the negative. So let me get some of this cloth tape removed, get this cut back, get the wires exposed, and see what we're looking at. So apparently they don't want you to use a license plate frame. As you can see, I'm hitting these bolts here, and all the holes would line up top. Because of this lip, I need to actually set all the way back, otherwise these little LED bulbs won't have enough thread on them to stick through and screw down. So if we take our license plate and it just sits right on top of those, seats in there just fine. Any kind of frame around this at all, basically it's not going to fit. Alright, so as I was saying, the weather can be a little unpredictable up here. So now we got rain and hail. Bust out the awning here. It'll still be a little wet, but we got some wiring to go, so we're gonna keep going. And while I was crimping and twisting wires just to hook up the lights, the sun's coming back out again. Let's get back to work. On the truck harness, you just see it sticking out there. There's a white wire and there's a black wire. I did red or positive on the LED to the white wire, negative ground to the black wire. Alright, so a bunch of zip ties later, we got everything secured up out of the way. Like I said, if you don't have the backup camera, you're not going to have, or the trailer surround view camera option on your plug, then you're not going to have this cable. But I just kind of zip tied the slack up out of the way. This little module, like I said, don't know what that is, but just zip tied it to this trailer plug to keep it secure. Zip tied everything up here so it doesn't hang down behind the truck as best as possible. Here, while it was raining, I went ahead and reconnected these connectors. It's basically the same thing. You just shove the connectors together, push this red part up, pop this in, this other connector, put the connectors together, push this red clip in. This extra one you see here, I'm actually going to run my lights and the bumper up to the actual switch so I can manually control them. The other option, you could tap into reverse lights. I would recommend, if you're going to do that, you could probably just tap into your trailer plug reverse light signal. If you wanted to tap into a wire, that would be the easiest way to do it, is your ground and reverse signal there. But like I said, I want manual control of mine, so I can run a cable up to the switch. Alright, so let me hop out of here and get stuff done for the tire mount and everything else. So one thing Chassis Unlimited did, they didn't talk about it on their website, at least as of the recording of this video, is they changed the latch mechanism. So instead of the push button they used to have, they have this little knob that'll pop it free. Once that's done, you can pull the pin, and hard to do this holding the camera, so I'm going to cut this as I pull it open. Once they have it open, the pin will drop in here and can keep the swing gate in place. So this is the mechanism I was talking about. It's got these little teeth, it's a double lock. So one thing I noticed on this swing gate when I first got it, before I'd even mounted it, probably easier to mess with this once it is mounted, is this stopper down here seemed to protrude just a little bit too far. So what I was having problems is this stopper would hit the bumper before this pin would actually engage both mechanisms on the lock. So this is actually just a double locking mechanism. The pin will actually go in, and it's going to be extremely hard to see. And it'll click once, and then you'll hear it click again, and if it doesn't lock all the way, you'll get this kind of an issue. So for one, you need to slam it pretty hard, and you can see it locks into place and it's real stable. Like I said, the problem I was having is it would engage out of just the first lock, and you can see I'm pulling up the pin on the left side here, and even though there's kind of this double mechanism that clicks twice to lock it in, and it is still held, it's not actually held in place. And until I adjusted this stopper mechanism, this is what was happening every time I closed it. So I ended up having to adjust this stopper to get it to close all the way properly. So if you find yours good doing that, try to adjust that stopper. One thing I want to add here is there is access still to get to the spare tire, so no issues there. Alright, here we go. So everything's done except wiring in my Wagon Designs lights. I'm not going to really get into that since it's kind of a unique for me situation, but it's just a positive and a negative wired up where I have my wires ran to from my switch box. So this is basically it. I got my 35 mounted on the back. I got my Backwoods Adventure mods, dual jerry can holder. It can also hold 4 Rotopacks, whatever you want. This is the primary reason I got this, is to hold more fuel or water depending on what the trip needs. Sorry, it decided to rain again. Just kind of a side view there. So let me put the camera here on the mount. Alright, so to open it, one thing you've got to be aware of is obviously you got all this stuff hanging in your way. The switch is down here. Once you pop that, that'll let it go, but it'll still be latched on the pin. You'll then have to reach around without letting it click back in to pull the pin. And it'll lock into place. Same thing over here. It'll pop out. Forward to the other side, pull the pin, so you can swing it out the rest of the way. So that's the basic install. What I'm going to do now is kind of maybe sit down, chat about some initial impressions, customer service, customer support, some issues we encountered here. And then, like I said, I'll add into the end of this video the installation of the backup camera. Like I said, it's blocked pretty much from back here into the tire and the jerry can holders. So really it just gives you some view to make sure, you know, if you're not hitting anything. It's not going to give you the precise view of your bumper, at least not without sticking it out on some kind of a post to, you know, way out here to be able to see down. So anyway, stick around, listen to me talk if you want. Skip ahead if you want to catch the camera install. Otherwise, thanks for watching. Alright, it's decided to rain again, so I'm half hanging out in the garage here. So I'm just kind of winging this, so if I ramble a little bit, apologize. But basically I just want to talk about initial impressions, customer service, customer support, things like that. Obviously I can't really give a good review on the bumper until you've had some time to actually use it, put it through its paces, make sure it lasts, has good durability. So really, like I said, this is more initial impressions and thoughts on customer service and support and the bumper itself. The bumper itself, initial impressions, it looks good. You know, the powder coating was good, the welds look good, it looks like a solid piece. You know, the swing gates seem solid. The downsides of it, like we saw, is the lack of space to put your backup sensors in there, having to notch those out. Obviously not having the trailer hitch work trailer plug work for the vehicles that have the surround view camera. I can see how that could be overlooked, but you know, again, something they should be aware of. The other thing is those lights for the license plate. They're kind of cheap. I don't really like the way they go on to hold the license plate, the way you have to basically cut wires if you ever want to get the plate off again. You know, it seems like there could be some better design to put something actually in the sides shining at them. You know, not necessarily using the OEM hardware, but some other option besides just using some cheap little LED lights that screw in like that. Plus they stick out from the license plate right there by where you're going to be stepping to get up on the back. You could snag them with your foot, break them off. So the other thing is the mounting instruction. These are the instructions here. It's just a sheet of paper, all text, no pictures. You know, pictures are worth 1,000 words. So you know, some indicators of where things are at. You know, it just says, you know, disconnect the wiring for the OEM wiring harness. It makes no indications of, you know, where's that at. Obviously you can find it if you had to, climb under there. It's not too hard, but it'd be good to have some pictures. The other thing is no torque specs. I mean, if you're bolting anything on a vehicle, bolting anything at all, you should have torque specs listed, so nobody has to look them up, nobody accidentally uses the wrong one for your product, things like that. The other thing, this talks about adjusting the bumper up and down and side to side, but like we saw, it bolts right to the trailer hitch, so there's not really any up or down movement there. And side to side, you're limited by the slop in the screws, which means there really isn't any. So to me, it looks like these instructions are really kind of a generic printout, either generally for a lot of bumpers and they just send the same ones, or there's been a lot of changes since these were printed out. and so they're out of date. The other thing is having to break those tack welded nuts off the bumper. Again, no mention of it in the instructions. I called to have to get clarification on that, and they did say yes, you do. But again, that should be in the instructions. The other thing, I guess on that same topic, is customer service, customer support. I don't see any lead times listed on the page for their website at this time, but I'm 99% sure when I ordered mine, it said there was a 6 to 8 week lead time. 2 months went by, 8 weeks, so I sent an email, just polite, asking what the update is, what the status was. They said it would be about another month. Another month went by, I haven't heard anything. About 3 more weeks, almost 2 months, hitting basically 2 months from they said it would be 1 more month mark. I'm sitting in my computer getting ready to maybe type up another email to ask what's going on, and then I finally get a shipping notice. So it was 4 months total from the time I ordered to get the bumper. I can understand maybe the website not being up to date, not getting around to updating it, not refreshing your lead times. So maybe that's being off. But when you call on a phone 2 months in, you should have a general idea of where in the process of manufacturing your bumpers at. If you say 1 month, it should be, plus minus a week at best, not double what you estimated. So again, just some constructive criticism and some feedback there. The other thing is just getting a hold of customer support. I did email them originally about those nuts. Several days went by and I hadn't heard anything, so I had to call to actually get some information. Other than that, they did get back to me quickly as far as the shipping information. I'd email them, and within the next business day they would get back to me without that information. So kind of hit or miss, a little bit good on the getting back to you on the estimates, being a little off on the actual times they quote you, being a little hard to get a hold of for technical information by email. So definitely when you call them, it seems like you're getting the same customer service person who handles the shipping information as well. So the last thing about the bumper itself, they said on their webpage, end of last year, they changed the design to be a 3-piece design with some internal bracing. Now, what the purpose of that was for, whether it was to save money on materials and manufacturing time, or was it truly to improve the design to make it more rigid, could be a little both, hard to say. I'm wondering if those changes are accounting for some of the issues we're having with those parking sensors. That is listed on their website as a change to the bumper design. What's not listed is those latch designs. Now that's a pretty significant change that you would think you'd want your customers to know about, and maybe why you changed them. So as far as what this new design is, how it's going to do, how it's going to perform, I haven't seen any reviews, haven't seen any comments. I'll certainly post some updates later once we get into actually using it. So that was kind of a lot of negative stuff, or like I said, I mean it more as feedback. Like I said, ended on a positive note. All the welds, the powder coat, the construction, the swing outs, all seem really good. So it seems, at least as far as the assembly and the components used, it's a quality bumper. Like I said, time will tell. So let's see how that goes. Sorry, a little all over the place, a little rambling. Like I said, if you want to watch the camera install, watch that. Again, thanks for watching. All right, I'm recording this before putting the dual swing out bumper on, so you'll probably notice a little wardrobe change here. I'm just limited on time on the weekend, so just splitting this between 2 weekends. So what we're going to do is put this reverse camera on, basically relocate it from the tailgate up to the back of the rack. Basically, with the dual swing out bumper on and the spare tire, you're not going to be able to use your backup camera that's mounted in the tailgate handle. So depending on your setup, how you actually do this might differ. So this is just kind of a general overview on what I'm doing here. So let's get into this. So this is the kit that I got from Camera Source. I'll put a link in the description. You can just order the OEM camera yourself if you're somebody that can manufacture your own mounts and cases. I'll put the OEM camera number in the description as well. Just a reminder, there's a different kit and different camera if you have the surround view system or not. My vehicle has a surround view, so that's the information, the link to the kit that I'll be providing. This kit comes with the camera, comes with a case, as well as a little mount. I'm just using a little piece of aluminum 90 to actually mount it to my rack. Comes with the extended cable you need, as well as some screws if you need those for the case as well as the mount. So I'm going to get this put together and then thrown up on the rack. So when you're putting this together, in order to know which way the camera needs to face, the connector will be to the driver's side of your vehicle or left side as you're looking at the back of the truck standing in the back. So what I've done is I've put some saran wrap over the screen here, and what I'm going to try to do is basically with the e-brake on, foot on the brake, car in reverse, and some saran wrap on the screen. Basically just going to make some reference lines roughly where my bumper's at, and because I'm going to be mounting the camera higher up, obviously these aren't going to match up perfectly with the new camera, but this will just give me some rough positionings on where the bumper's at, as well as the lines to center things up as easy as possible. So what I'm going to do now is just get the camera mounted up on the rack. I've gone ahead and just routed the cable now, for now, just down to the connection. Basically, I'm going to put it in reverse, check the camera, get this positioned to where it matches up as best as possible with the previous screen. So I'll get that done now and kind of show you the results once it's over. All right, so this is where we ended up. You can see I'm pretty good left to right with the center lines. I think for where the camera's at and what I need to use it for, this will be perfect for accomplishing that. So let's go back and get the wires routed. All right, so let me show you what we ended up doing here. We routed the wire cable in through here, zip tied it along this bar, down over here, back down. I just wrapped some tape here to keep the zip ties from slipping. Doesn't look the greatest, but it works. Like I said, came down, dropped it through here. I just put a little silicone around where it drops through. And what I ended up doing in here is I had some of these wall hanger clips, and I didn't use the adhesive that came with these because it's meant for hanging on walls. I used some actual 3M tape, and if you use 3M tape a lot and really want it to stick, I strongly recommend getting some of this primer. It'll make stuff pretty much stick forever. So I put some of these clips here, ran it down through there, comes in through the hole. That basically just drops down into the truck, so let me move into there and I'll show you. So underneath the truck, we come out right here, and then I just ran it along this main wire that was already here above where the spare tire goes, and then over into the rest of the truck. Got a little excess, so I just looped it up here and zip tied it up out of the way. All right, I think that's it. Thanks for watching.